going to introduce our panelists. So when I requested their bios, everybody's got incredible credentials. So I took the liberty to butcher their credentials. I'm not roasting them or anything like that. But I just took sort of snippets that are interesting because, trust me, these 5 wonderful gentlemen here have incredible credentials. So that's just the baseline. So Mira Perka, to my left, is the first panel member. He's the most interesting part that I found, that he was the district commander both for Tulsa and Afghanistan. That's pretty cool. Tulsa, we all hear, but Afghanistan, that's a little challenging district, I would say. He also is with Mead and Hunt, and he is the vice president and group leader for Mead and Hunt in the Water Resources Group. And he has served in multiple positions with SME Tulsa Post, but currently is the program's director for our post. Robert Day, next to Mr. Corker, is the principal and director for Synergy here in town. Synergy, he has served in many positions, design, construction, environmental. But what I found interesting, that he's a PE in 44 states. So 1867, today, Alaska purchase was completed. So do you remember how much we pay for it? Per acre, total amount? $7 million, $2 per acre. So maybe you can go and become a PE in Alaska next, just thinking of ahead. So how many states we have? 48 plus 2, 50. So also, Robert Day is SME fellow, so that's interesting snippet of information of Robert. Mr. Keith Line, who is, can you raise your hand please? Thank you. He's the principal of Keith Line Engineering, and he's one of the presenters today. He has over 30 years of experience in engineering, design, construction, etc. and so forth. But what I found interesting in his bio is that he worked in a vertical construction as a journeyman carpenter to put himself through engineering school. So kudos for you. You know what it takes to become an engineer and work hard, like that fact. And he's active in multiple engineering-related associations and societies. Mr. Johnny Bell, the gentleman in the middle wearing a red shirt, he is graduated about less than 20 years ago from OSU and has served in multiple positions here at the Tulsa District. He recently Chief of Design Branch and currently the Chief of Technical Support Branch in Operations Division, and has only about 150 miles of navigation channel, O&M responsibilities, 5 blocks, 8 powerhouses, and provides field engineering support to all lakes and dams within Tulsa District. So minor gig, right? He also has served in U.S. Navy and Army National Guard. Last panel member, not the least, is Mr. Christopher Strunk there at the end of the table. He's a senior structural engineer and hydraulic steel structures subject matter expert. So I was thinking yesterday when it was like really windy and hot, so I was thinking Chris's bio and thinking that if you want to build a skyscraper, so he might be the person to talk to because he's a steel structure subject matter expert. And I assume he's the certified inspector, right? And he also is a USACE and FEMA instructor for structure specialist in urban search and rescue. So Chris has multiple responsibilities, but I thought that this his specialty, steel structures, is pretty awesome, and how that ties to bridges and such. So he's also in the education and mentoring committee for SME Tulsa Post. Then I am Anna Childers with CH2M here in Tulsa. I'm a project manager, senior environmental scientist. And then, in case you wonder, let's get this out of the way. I am not from Louisiana. My accent is from Finland. I have been in Oklahoma for 22 years. I call it home. And then every now and then I call my other place at home. So I'm kind of double dipping here. So but we have questions, and obviously the presentations were so interesting, so much material to cover that our time is a little bit truncated when it comes to the panel questions. and answer. So I'm going to take the liberty to pick and choose some of the pertinent questions that I think are relevant based on the presentations we've heard today. And when we received these questions from the board members and SME members, they can be typically grouped into sort of the piece of maintenance and operations of the infrastructure, funding of the infrastructure, funding needs, and educating, informing of the existing infrastructure and the future needs. So starting with the question, a tad modified. So I would start with Chris Drunkwick speaking before, and maybe Johnny, your working experience with the core infrastructure. Does the core have a mechanism of prioritizing the infrastructure? So this is kind of multiple questions rolled into one. So to be respectful of our time, 20 minutes left for all these questions. So does the core prioritize the infrastructure based on the criticality of it? And is that pretty much a standard procedure, systematic with the core to use the prioritization for those infrastructure pieces that are critical versus those that are less critical? And do you guys use, the follow-up question is, any cool tools, mechanisms, procedures to do that? Do you want to start, Mr.
Sure. We do. What we execute annually, and we started doing this in the last few years, we do operational condition assessments. And out of that, we do that on all of our assets, which are broken down into subcomponents of that asset. And there is ratings, A through F, that we apply to that based on what we see. It's guidance that is given to us out of headquarters, so that we're all consistent with applying that when we're out there doing either our annual inspections or periodic inspections, or any other time we see a component starting to develop, we look at it and we apply that to be consistent. We utilize that also for our budgeting process. That's how we rank against our other districts. They're out there doing their OCAs as well. So when we build our budgets, which are 2 years out, that becomes a very important component for us to be able to get our budgets and compete with the other districts throughout the Board of Engineers.
There are some mechanisms for getting additional funding on an emergency type basis, whether it's a road or a bridge, or we do, like I said, our budget cycle is like a 2-year cycle, so there are methods for getting projects in that are not currently scheduled that reach that order of magnitude requirement. The other one I'd say is some districts, and I've worked in outside of Tulsa a little bit, in the Northwest, they hold some of their O&M funding aside in a pot, and then they let the districts kind of compete for it, and they present at a master panel. A gentleman like Mr. Bell would represent each district, and then they would take those somewhat smaller projects that aren't going to meet the dollar threshold to get funding from Congress, pull the regional money together to do some of that work. I don't know how Tulsa in the Southwest does that, but I think there's a similar method.
Oh, yes. I'm not so familiar with that type of money.
Kind of what, I mean, they start with your base, I think it's 5-year average of what you've received over the last 5 years. So that's kind of your baseline that you start with. Then they're looking at the projects that you're doing within that 5-year base. And if there are some considered nice to have things versus some mission critical needs from one district to the other, SWD doesn't really approve carrying that 5-year average from year to year to year until they take a look to see what projects you have racked and stacked in there. And within Southwestern Division, criticality is usually pretty common, so you don't see a lot of, all right, we're going to take money from Tulsa and put it in Little Rock this year, and next year taking from Fort Worth and move it to Tulsa, because a lot of these projects do span many years, so you can really see the criticality over time. Within the Tulsa district, we do try and, it's almost like you're discretionary versus non-discretionary. discretionary funding. We, I guess we call them must pays, or I should say we used to call them, we still call them. The must pays, which is your salary and just things you need to operate, whether it's grease guns, or fuel for the Mr. Pat. Those things are must pays that are built into that budget. We've always tried to maintain within that going on budget some stuff that we can do above and beyond the day-to-day maintenance. But it gets tougher and tougher from year to year. And we do have a list that covers that maybe 20%. And it goes much deeper in case we're able to get additional funding from the headquarters. Or if they say, well, Little Rock doesn't need that money this year, we'll look at consultants. I think it's really hard to do, especially with
It was a good year when we get $10 to $15 million of Mustang. It should be for somewhere between 6 and 8 million. But to give you an idea of how we're just falling behind on that, right now we've got over $80 million in critical backlog maintenance needs.
How much? 80?
$80 million. And that critical is based on 50% chance of failure within the next 5 years. That's what defines critical. If you look at our maintenance needs overall, it's in the hundreds. That's going to soon become critical.
Well, what I would like to extend to the AE firms here, there's 3 of you. How do you support, have you supported, and is there innovative ways to support this infrastructure maintenance, rehabilitation pieces? Have you been involved with the Tulsa district or other districts? You want to start there?
Well, I mean, ultimately, if you have critical needs, you have to have money. So we can look at, and we work, I mean, we don't do much core work, not only core work really is, we told you, but we do work with a lot of small dam owners and small utilities that are pretty well in the same boat. Actually much worse shape. They don't have very much money at all. And they have requirements that they have to meet for, in most cases, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to maintain their facilities, their dams. So we always try to provide them with a prioritization of what they absolutely must do and try to do as for the least amount of money that can. But it's difficult because in the end you do need to spend more money.
Robert, do you have, from your experience, how you work on these critical infrastructure pieces?
Ours is usually through some kind of government contract with the MATOC or SATOC, so it's design services provided for a task order. Sometimes it's for a core district, sometimes it's for a contractor doing it with other districts.
Any specific projects you worked on lately on a critical infrastructure that?
Our last one, Kathy might have been Keystone, it's there's electrical mechanic. About this one, it's pretty much defined, the scope of what needs there are as far as critical.
Mr. Keelan, you had an opportunity to showcase the entire project that you worked on.
One of the things that I see effective is everybody sees a rating of something of like is that failure or infrastructure, the rating A, B, C, and that. Okay, you have a bunch of F's down here, but the thing until someone puts a photograph with it, then that gets people's attention. In fact, one time I had to write a letter to close something. And I don't know, and I only done it twice in my life. And anyway, so I went home that night, thought about it, and I wrote the letter to close it. And the city manager called me and said, "No, we can't close that, we can't close that." I go, "I'll tell you what, I'll send you a photograph, and you can call me back and let me know." When he called me back, he said, "Yeah, let's close it." So photographs are real powerful, and that's more than a rating system. And so it really makes it more tangible. That's just one thing.
And sometimes that may be the solution. I mean, that may be a solution, maybe a cost-effective solution. You may have a component of a project that doesn't serve a purpose anymore. It doesn't serve a good purpose anymore. And so we recently did a project for the district investigating the tunnel, and I think our overall recommendation is to go ahead and plug that tunnel, because although it could theoretically serve a purpose, it hasn't served that purpose in over years, and it's impossible to maintain right now. And so that may be a solution in some cases.
So moving on to the sort of the solution, so there's the one part is educating and understanding that, you have to have the baseline data to even move forward. So from the, Chris, you highlighted in your presentation, there's a national goal for a national database for the core infrastructure, for the gates and such. Are there any other tools in the core that you're using to sort of do the asset management piece, that assessing what you have so you can manage for them?
Yes, we have a database system referred to as STEM, FEM's Facilities Equipment Maintenance. That's recently come on board for us all to be using to be consistent across the board. And it captures all of our routine maintenance along with our non-routine maintenance. So that helps us, and we're just now learning how to utilize that program. And it can give a supervisor out in the field a report that will answer the question, well, for the time I spent doing maintenance, did I do it on the most critical piece of it? And that's a continuing work in progress to better utilize that system, and that's what we have right now.
The database that I showed, before it will go national, we'll have to get plugged in where FEMS and Ed interlink and communicate between the two. That's what's holding it back from being a national type system that's used. And the programming for that, if you look at, I talk about 2,000 pieces of HSS here. Nationally, you can extrapolate how large this is. It's not just a small bit of code writing. It's very difficult to tie in some of our systems based on the operating systems that they use with the requirements we have for security in our computers and working under DoD and Army.
Can you all speak up just a bit?
What Chris is referring to is just hydraulic steel structures. Their film has every single asset we have in the database. So which is huge, but it's a lot better than what we used to.
Well, I'll take questions here shortly. So I wanted to go through some of these critical questions that I'm kind of bundling them together, and we are almost out of time. So on the costing side, obviously we know that you have to have baseline assessment, you have to assess your infrastructure, you have to have mechanisms, tools, gadgets to even inventory what you have, and then you have to start identifying the prioritization piece, and then you start finding funding mechanism. This is for all of the panelists. Do you know of any innovative funding pieces? I think Miro mentioned, or I think you mentioned the P3 funding, dedicated trusts. That how do these happen? Obviously, state budgets are low, federal budgets are not looking to cut either. So how is there a mechanism, a vision at least, by the different entities to pull strengths together, not only necessary funding, but also resources? I think Mr. Heathline was highlighting that Oliver Aviv was doing the bathymetric surveys for the project. So having these partners giving maybe in-kind labor or direct money set aside for the infrastructure. So this is for all the panels. Mr. Miro, you want to start?
Yeah, so I know that the Corps has several pilot projects that are underway for P3. What they started with was looking at navigation first and looking at dredging on the Great Lakes as a pilot project. Again, it's gathering interest, but the question is how do you structure this so that you do provide that incentive to bring in the private dollars while still maintaining the structure at the level the Corps wants to maintain. So that's part of it. Other ones that have been looked at is navigation in terms of the inland navigation system, and perhaps getting investors who would invest in it. But again, there's got to be a revenue stream that's going to come from this. So do we start charging for lockages? And part of that then goes to the investor who will pay for, rebuilding the facility. Another area I know that there's a lot of interest in, because we do a lot of work with hydropower, is there would be a lot of interest in hydropower and upgrades of hydropower. But currently, the legislation in Congress that allows for P3 specifically excludes hydropower. But if that legislation would change, then I know that there would be investors who would invest in upgraded facilities and then getting some of the revenue off of that in terms of either power or revenue. So there are mechanisms that could be put in place. This is much, much, much above our level and everyone here, but I know that with the right legislation that there would be investors who would come in. But again, it would require changes not only in terms of legislation, but changes in terms of how these projects are operated and how they were managed.
Robert, do you have anything to add to the funding piece?
Not really, except, the best thing we can do as a member of the AE design community is to make sure that there's design input, or that's one thing. The most cost-effective thing for us to do is advise the government. As a contractor or supplier needs to be on board to fix something, or say maintenance firm, the sandblaster maintenance spec that we provide design if needed. It's not just give them a hard problem to get fixed.
And that's a good point. It takes imagination to, go to moon or Mars. So maybe that is the sort of the vision, to have the vision and being visionary, to provide the feedback whenever you can to your professional associations.
Yeah, we've seen some of these projects go out where there's a need for maintenance or repair, and some of these designs they may be old, but no one thinks they need to be redesigned. They've worked this long, they need to be patched and repaired and put back in service. So we're in the cycle of having to think there's got to be a redesign. Sometimes original manufacturers, they're perfect seals in good place, so we can help there.
Mr. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
Just add on hydropower. I don't know if it was such a big deal to come here. We partner with Southwest Power Administration, and we do get customer funding for hydropower projects. So that helps. Right now, the Weber Falls major rehabilitation is totally customer funded. We're about to start turbine rehab at Denison. They've committed to that. Following Denison, they will commit, or have so far committed to rehabbing RS Kerr and Keystone. So we're making some progress there. And of course, they generated by selling that power, and they generate that revenue, which helps us. So we're doing pretty good in the hydropower arena. We just need to work on the navigation and our flood risk management structures around.
Yeah, I wonder what people, well, I guess there's communities who would pay for avoidance of the flood risk. Mr. Keaton?
Yeah, the one thing that I kind of noticed, if you have to go for a loan, and then you really make sure you're economically justified paying for something that's more on the private side. But then, like in other words, OWB won't loan the money if your facility's not working. So that's something that's to reassess the value of that property and to determine if the money's working. I think that's an important part, because I think some lakes are just going to go away someday. I think that's over the next 50 years. That's what's going to happen.
What I would add is there's some auxiliary benefits to our structures that we've seen that the public takes use of. A lot of the road surfaces and bridges that go over our structures were not built for highways or roads. They were built for our access to the projects around as we built them. Communities developed, recreation developed around it. Then they became roads. They're necessary for schools, emergency transportation. So they have a value to the public. At Keystone, we just replaced the bridge with a partnership with Oklahoma Department Department of Transportation. They saw the need getting that road replaced because it serves such an important part for that community. There are several other bridges that we're looking at currently within the Tulsa district to maybe go that route where we do a partnership with the state. I don't think any of those have been finalized yet. It's determined which one first or how the percentage of partnership works. But we are looking at it for other types of infrastructure. It's just really the flood risk type components that don't have a benefit until you need it, that affect all of us. We all live in this community, or most of us do. So those are the different. That's all I've been.
I forgot to mention earlier, Chris talked about buildings as far as an asset. I know we're talking about dams and all the other heavier cost items. And Kathy, you have to help me out. We got approached by a group earlier this year. What they were trying to do is take over core project buildings and parks and overlooks and that kind of thing. I'm pretty sure, Kathy, it was for PTSD soldiers, kind of an area to have them come bring their families, fish, or just, hang out and relax or whatever. Pretty sure that was all private sector funded, and we were just asked as they to help out with paint, patch, repair, architecture, building setup, site work. It's absolutely a cool thing because the Corps is struggling to keep up with all that stuff, benches, buildings, that kind of stuff. So we're trying to do that with private dollars, and yet it's a core project that's got to build. Some of these structures are beautiful. There's stone and good timber, and good work for the wounded warriors. That's a pretty cool thing to take the private sector and help our military. So.
And like Mira mentioned, it's the revenue stream that what is it for me piece that is important, and those happen probably way outside of this round, those benefits, but then the ability to influence the community through professional associations and work we do could be one way. So we are almost up to our time, and we can go just a couple of minutes over. I know the audience will have plenty of questions based on the presentations we heard, the three of them. Mira gave the big overview, sort of framed the conversation. Mr. Keith Line gave the presentation on the dredging of the lake, and then Chris Strong just sort of a tip talk of the core, like you said, right? Tip talk of the gates, but also how big the district and how many projects and how many pieces of infrastructure there are with this district. So anything based on that, or any specific questions that you have in mind, this is your moment to ask the questions from the panelists. Any questions?
I don't know if I have a question. Maybe this will work its way into a question, I suppose. But this project that we talked about out at Warrica Lake, the flash and bang was pretty quick, and I think Dave Taylor, who runs the service district out there, I think his predictions were this November they were going to be out of water supply before the rains came. So they were really at crisis. He had to go sell to the communities to try and invest in this project. And certainly now, visionary, because they won't be in that point at the same level. I think the lake was maybe at 28% conservation pool when it started raining. But that compared to John Redmond up in Kansas, where they're doing a much bigger dredging project. The flash to bang for that was not nearly as short. The cost was a lot bigger. So I guess the neat thing about this project here is that they were able to manage the scope, manage the size, and get a real benefit for the communities. Project much bigger in Kansas certainly is necessary for them to have it bigger because of the nuclear power plant that has a much bigger demand. But I think for small businesses to be able to anticipate where those crises may occur will allow you to posture to be prepared when the roads all meet, to be able to jump in and execute quickly. It rained, so they never hit this November where they were just out of water. But they would have been postured if it didn't rain in 15. to the actions they were put out there. So I think the question maybe for the, why did we do this workshop is how can SAME help frame what the Corps is doing across the entire portfolio. Where are those projects? You certainly, Great Salt Plains was talked about. They say that's silted in so much, sometimes you can walk across that lake, and so the project purposes has changed over time. They're still doing its flood control mission, so that's what it's able to do, but certainly the recreation's changed a lot, and certainly the water supply over the years. But how can we better anticipate those requirements as an engineering community, partner and team, and be ready for those crises when they occur, so we can jump on it and make sure that we aren't facing no water in southwest Oklahoma because Warrica just is at that 1% at the time. When the hydrologists say it's a bell curve. Sometimes you're way over here and there's no water. Sometimes you're way over here and there's just too much water. But that's really the project's designed to operate in full spectrum. And how are you best postured to respond? How are we best postured to respond?
Yeah, and I think this exactly the workshop is intended to sort of scratch the surface, perk our interest, the awareness of the complexity of these projects, and having experts as this table of gentlemen over here to give a little bit in-depth more analysis, and then we learn from that and take back to our offices and
That's good. I like that. No, actually, we are in the midst of researching to get further into the drone stuff, and so I think it's a tool to be reckoned with. I think it has unbelievable amount of use.
yeah.
The technology that's evolving there is going to be quite helpful for evaluating, performing topographic surveys as well as infrastructure assessment. So I think it's going to be nothing but the upside.
I can maybe answer your question. So the Tulsa district purchased one of those drones when we were doing the flooding and used it, won some awards within USACE for the drone use, and then we were immediately grounded because we didn't have the right permission for the license. So a 12-year-old is the right answer because your kids can use the same drone that we own and fly it around the neighborhood. Anytime you're using it for business or government use, the FAA regulates that use. And so if the 12-year-old did it, then you're good. If one of us in this room did it, then you have to be certified. It's almost the same as being certified as a pilot by the FAA to use it for professional use. So the Corps, I want to say Mobile District has a few folks that are licensed, maybe former soldiers that flew drones in the Army that were able to transfer their credentials over. I don't know. I've been out of this district for 90 days, so I know that they were trying to get somebody licensed because they've got the drone downstairs. And the Corps is kind of just trying to figure out how they're going to get everybody certified and maintain that. But those requirements are FAA requirements, not necessarily USACE specific. So there are companies, I think, that have that certification, so you can get them to fly your stuff, or you can have your 12-year-old do it.
I would add, make sure you get the right permissions to fly over our projects. Just don't start flying around. Check with your contracting representative and your Corps personnel before you start doing that.
To answer the question, truthfully, the person that did it was certified to do that, but there's also licensings now, and I think there's only 1 or 2 licenses people in the state of Oklahoma, and we have access to one. So if you need something, be licensed to one.
Okay.
Just for technology purposes, to continue on with the drones, our research lab in Vicksburg this year is looking at drones to inspect gates and bridges. They've got a big test bridge set up, and they'll fly the drone around and see what all they can see as deficiencies, and then they'll have inspectors come out and climb it and see if it's relatable. And so we may see some of the drones being used for types of inspections. There's been talk in USACE about using them to fly up inside our conduits. we have an earthquake out by Arcadia. I'm the guy that they call and go up inside the condo to see if it's leaking. Which is kind of weird, but I'll do it. But so now they're looking, well, you can take a drone and you can fly in and you can see if you had any openings in your joints but so now you're talking about someone who can fly it into closed space and close proximity. Those types of certifications will be required. But there are applications that we should be seeing in the next couple of years that are pretty neat.
And the technology is evolving as we speak. And then LiDAR brings a whole other deal up, and that's all exciting too as well.
I was just going to say, they also, I was going to ask you about your underwater pictures. Do you have an underwater ROV for that?
No, we did not. We utilized normal technology with a good operator.
Okay.
And enhanced it. It was actually Lowrance, as opposed to high sophisticated Lowrance.
Well, we've used a small firm that has underwater ROVs, and they also have terrestrial ROVs, which you can run on conduits and other things. And have the capability to put on not only cameras, but also sonar to the camera.
There's even some that are even X-ray where they can analyze the wires and all that. The city of Tulsa does have a lot of that.
So back to these questions that the panelists were able to see before today's discussion. Something that I wanted to ask the panelists is, before we talk about privatization, is that what outside of the box thinking you can think of that would preserve the federal infrastructure? Is there ways that to take the load off, to take the use off, find innovative ways? Let's say that, for example, M&I water supply, thinking of M&I water supply portfolio that may be indirect potable use, direct potable use, something that takes off the load for serving, for example. Are those part of the everyday thinkings of your job or the projects that you worked on in your age?
Well, I know that for dam safety, they have, if you have a dam that has deficiency, oftentimes they'll put in place interim risk reduction measures, which aren't necessarily out of the box thinking, but they are things to reduce the load on the dam until such time as they can affect the repairs. That's a normal thing that's done.
I think also too, utilizing technology to our advantage is a big deal. The only thing we don't want to utilize technology, you don't want to be part of the alpha or beta testing. So you can get out there too far and utilize technology where it actually fails. So that has to be still monitored and controlled with people that understand the technology as well as its limitations. So that's, but it does help significantly to be able to look at a lot of stuff with it.
So, for example, let's say Lake Ulrika, so we had a yield issue and also the intake issue there, but is there the precursor to that sort of planning? Can we conserve water in the community so we can push that dredging further out? So that's goes off the critical cycle, that this may be something else we can prioritize because we can do some measures ahead of that action, that implementation piece. So how integrated is the planning piece at the core infrastructure, that what can we do to avoid the action itself?
Well, when they sit down in Ulrika, when they went into a level 4 drought status, Duncan, all the cities put immediate restriction on their water use, and virtually everybody reduced their water use by half, and that includes through the summer. And so people are willing to give up a little bit. The biggest thing is they don't want to give it up all the time.
This isn't directed at more weekend, but as we're looking at our projects, as we're updating and we're repairing or rehabilitating our gates and some of the components of the structures, the use of the projects have changed over years, as we've discussed. So what we try to do is we look at the gate as not necessarily put the same gate back in. I use Texoma as an example. Texoma has a pretty robust fishing industry just downstream of the dam. That industry is directly affected by the water quality and oxygen content that's in the distilling basin. Right now, the releases that are made to make that a viable habitat are taking 20-foot wide or 20-foot tall by like 16 feet wide flood control gates, cracking a little bit to let water out. Well, that oxygenates the water and that makes it habitable. What we have to look at as we're doing modifications to projects is how can we make the same type of environment possible without using the big hammer, using the big gates to make the releases. I think Cliff was it the S-Docks that we did at Tim Hill is one of those projects where we came in and we come up with a new way to solve the environmental problem for the public without damaging our structure, which then increases the life of the structure. So I think those are the types of opportunities.
You can also enhance the structure. We're working with a client that shall remain confidential, but I'm relicensing their hydro project, and oftentimes they have to open gates to release water in flood control. They can't run it all through the turbine. So one thing they're looking at as part of relicensing is installing additional turbine, a smaller one. And when they have these situations, they can run that additional water they would normally have to just spill through the turbine and get that benefit for it.
And I would encourage all the aid firms that are here that when you're brought on either as a prime or by a contractor or a subcontractor to work on the work, that when you propose advantages, it needs to be a clear benefit to the government of the project. Articulate those, express those in a manner in which we can evaluate them, and we are flexible, believe it or not, when we can be. There are some instances where we cannot, but we try and look at those to see that. We have 360 people in the office, another 200 or so in engineering construction, the rest of the district. We all use the projects. They're part of our community. They do recreation there. We take a lot of pride in them. So articulate the benefit. It's a clear benefit to the government, not just a benefit to you and the contractor executing your portion, but how does it benefit everyone? And that would be my recommendation.
And that's an excellent segue to a question that I had from Keith's presentation. You mentioned that you worked with the Corps in formulating the different alternatives. So how lengthy of a process was that? What did it entail? Input from multiple agencies? Did you develop the alternatives for the project? How?
It would be a group of us that all worked on that, and essentially we would propose, based on the situation, we did the environmental and planning and engineering at the same time. And so that reduced the project life, design life in half.
Did you provide input through a rec, or just it was from the federal side?
Yes, from the federal side would be, we would make the submittal and we would have these meetings and then critique it based on feedback that we would get at these bi-weekly meetings. And so there was a constant dialogue, and that's probably the most important, constant dialogue. And if we're going off cue here, they brought us back, and so that was a big help. So that was...
And one question we had here was then the prioritization. So what role does privatization programs of Corps of Engineers utility systems play in extending the life of the infrastructure? Does it extend, or is it just pointing up the problems to somebody else?
So I think that's more of a question that probably relates to military facilities. I know that the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy are in the process of trying to basically divest themselves of their utilities, privatize it. When I was the commander here, we looked at that with Fort Sill, and so it's something that a lot of military communities, military bases are in the process of basically what happens is they put various aspects of the utility system, either stormwater or sewer systems or water supply, and local utilities and or local communities that own public utility systems will bid on that, and they usually come and it requires a 50-year, basically 50-year contract to maintain that infrastructure for that 50 years.
That's difficult probably in some military bases post, of course, on the water supply, that's wastewater, that's privatized. So that takes the federal, so I guess the rehabilitation and repair then is on the contract. Is
That's
that
right. They own it. They basically they own it. They're required to maintain it.
And to add to that would be that I think a lot of projects are always project specific. There's very little magic bullet that solves all our problems. Every project is kind of unique and different based on shareholders and also the impact of the local community. So usually it takes an evaluation to really determine what package is best to manage us in the future. If that makes sense. Based on income that we can produce.
Any final questions from the audience? We're about to, you have one question there?
Yeah, this is for Chris Strunk. You had mentioned the Civil Works infrastructure software, and a lot of, besides the Corps of Engineers, is all these municipalities, the state of Oklahoma, there's tremendous need, as I see it, for the ability to manage that information, inventory, what's out there, what's not out there. Is that a proprietary program that the Corps developed, or is that off-the-shelf software? Are you aware that, is that expanding throughout the Corps of Engineers, or is that something that's just local to Tulsa?
It's proprietary. We programmed that database ourselves, or we didn't. When I say ourselves, I mean USACE. It was piloted by Walla Walla out of Northwest Division. Other districts are using it. As we mentioned earlier, it's tying it into our FIM-based system, so our operations and maintenance piece with our engineering and database, that's the holdup right now. But I think that there are software packages out there that municipalities can use. The problem is most of them don't have the type of infrastructure and the variety that we have. Ours is kind of unique. The only closest the closest thing we have to us is the Bureau of Reclamation, and they operate and maintain their structures differently than we do. Their purpose is a little bit different. So there isn't a whole lot of marketplace for that type of big global database information system, unfortunately.
At the core, there's probably much simpler software products out there that take care of tracking your systems, but the Corps of Engineers likes to go in and tweak these things where it talks to a lot of other databases, and you don't see that so much out in the private world.
And that's part of the problem, is that in the private municipalities, their systems don't talk at all. Customer service doesn't talk to people in the water department, they don't talk to people in maintenance. It's a real challenge for a lot of small municipalities.
Recently, I served as the senior structural engineer in the Northwest Division, and while I was there, we did an exercise called Cascadia Rising, where the Cascadia subduction zone off the coast of Oregon and Washington had a seismic event, a 9.0 earthquake, wipes out most of Seattle and some of the infrastructure. And we had to look at the cores. How do we move that division office from Portland to Omaha in control of water control from all these lakes back through the system across the Rocky Mountains. And we knew all this was coming years in advance. And just the data management of where's servers held, where's backups, where's our redundant backups. Can you actually transfer that amount of information? What's the reaction time? We still have to maintain our projects after a huge emergency event like that or disaster. And how does that take place? Our systems are built for those kind of, municipalities doesn't really have that kind of necessity for safety for defense for the nation as a whole.
Any other questions from the audience? I think we're close to up to an hour and Marius.
I was just gonna say, so, I didn't gonna close it up, but what we're gonna do is, Cindy's been taking copious notes, and I know Kathy's gonna probably send me her notes too. And what we'll do is I'll work with Cindy and we'll probably write an article for the military engineer based on this workshop that we had. So I'll take that on. I won't have it written next week by any means, but we'll put an article together and get that in the military engineer. So appreciate everyone's participation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for our panelists. Robert is still there. And thanks to our visitors. And as Mira mentioned, he was going to compile the notes. We have the presentations loaded up to our website. And go like our Facebook page. I know who's here, and I'm going to check if you have liked our Facebook page. We got to get 100 likes. And that's it. Be safe.
That's it with the panel.